Hey guys, so it's Tyler. In this video, I'm going to be going over our KFC lottery bot. So essentially think of a bot where you would scan a QR code and it would be a unique QR code on product kind of packaging or a product insert, and then that user would have the chance to win some type of prize. It could be a variety of different prizes, it could be more or less the same prize. So the way this works is there's going to be a QR code that would look something similar to this onto the packaging. So in our case, we were imagining it would be on one of the KFC buckets, and the customer would then purchase the bucket as normal, and then they would take out their phone, scan the code to see whether or not they've won a free complimentary meal, or maybe like a trip to an exotic place, or maybe something different. I got the idea from a kind of place in Canada called Tim Hortons, and they have these roll up the rims contests where when you buy a coffee, you would roll up the rim, and then on that rim, you would have the chance to win a free donut, another free coffee, a free car sometimes. Sometimes it was a trip, sometimes it was something else. So you have a different variety of prizes in this kind of lottery. And the good news with this is like you're not only kind of building a list, but you're engaging with the customer and you're encouraging them to buy more of whatever product that you want them to buy. So it works for kind of fast food chain restaurants, but it could also work in kind of the supplement space or maybe the beauty space where it's like a product that they're more likely to consume over and over again, like some type of skincare product. I'm not too diverse in that. So yeah, anyways, so those are the kind of use cases that we're thinking of here. I'm going to go into the actual logistics of how this works. So like I said, we have the QR code, like as you saw on the screen before, and that QR code is essentially linked to a unique identifier every single time. So it brings them to a unique link. Now the link isn't very different from one another, and that link is the ref URL. So you need to have like a baseline ref URL like this, and then you need to have a custom parameter. You don't necessarily need the custom parameter, I should reword that, but you do need to have a custom payload right here. So a field, a custom user field that saves a payload onto a custom field. So what this means is basically what happens here, and you can read this kind of text right here on the screen, and it's going to save whatever the payload is into the custom field. Now, what does that mean? That means your ref URL, this is the ref URL right here, is going to save whatever is after these two little dashes that you have to manually put as the payload into that custom field. So this is the payload right here in my case. So this is the unique identifier. This is the kind of unique code. And the reason why you're going to use a QR code that makes it in batches is because you want to make a unique QR code every single time. So it brings them to a different destination, and that payload is going to be unique for every single insert card. If that makes any sense. I'm hoping that you guys were able to follow along here. And what that'll do is you're also going to want basically a spreadsheet of all the different codes you have here. So these are all the codes that people can potentially put. I put on a whole bunch, which wasn't absolutely necessary. And then I put on some of the free prizes. I could have added more here, but again, it was all for example's sake. So I just added a couple different prizes here. And then you also want another worksheet that is the scanned codes. So like me and Sean already went through this with these two different codes here. So if somebody was to try to use this code again, it will give you the error message saying like, hey, somebody's already used this code, you can only use it once. Something along those lines. So I'll explain the logic kind of one at a time here. So first you have your ref URL. It saves a payload into this custom field. And again, the name doesn't really matter for your case if you ever wanted to try something like this. And there are other use cases that we'll probably go into in another video. Then it checks to see that this check isn't really super important, but I just figured I'd put it in there. This checks to see, was there a payload added, yes or no? Meaning, is there a value to this custom field? If the answer is no, then they get invalid lottery code flow. So this flow will just say like, hey, sorry, you've scanned a invalid QR code. So the next thing it does is it clears this custom field here. This custom field hasn't been used yet. And then it fetches the value from the spreadsheet using the code that you've gotten from the payload, that custom field right here. And then it puts it into this custom field. So this feels a little useless, but it's actually very important. Basically what it does is it takes the custom field right here, takes the code from this custom field, and then cross-references it onto this spreadsheet right here, saying, is this code on this spreadsheet? If the answer is yes, then paste that code into this custom field. And what that'll do is it'll check it, okay, does that custom field, the new custom field, have a value? If the answer is no, meaning there was no code that was identical to the list, the spreadsheet list, then they'll get invalid entry as well. So again, this basically cross-references to make sure that that code that you scanned in from is on the spreadsheet. And then the last check here is to make sure that that code hasn't already been used by somebody else. So what it does is it'll check to see on the use slash KFC codes right here, on the scan codes, to see this code, match lottery, KFC code. This is the one from the payload from the link. And if the answer is yes, meaning that code is the exact same as one of the codes on this spreadsheet right here, then scammer, which again, the custom field naming doesn't actually particularly matter, would add the first name to scammer field. And then if scammer field has a value, or is unknown in my case, it goes into the right direction, which would be here. And if it goes into the wrong direction, which would be down here, it would say like, hey, somebody has already used that QR code. Somebody's already scanned that code and claimed the prize. So that's how the logic works. That's like the very hard part to wrap your head around, because there's a couple different phrases here. So like phase one is just to see, okay, is there a code, right? Is there something attached to the payload? So if I didn't have this part in the payload, if I just had this, it wouldn't work. But if I add this, it'll work. And then the next thing it checks to see, is it a valid code? Does it work? Is it found inside this worksheet with all the codes and all the prizes to be won? If the answer is yes, then it goes off to the next step, which is has somebody else already used this code? So it checks this worksheet. Okay, so that is it for kind of the main thing, and then it checks to see, okay, has somebody won or lost in that code? And that one is checked actually right over here, so I didn't miss that part right here. It also checks to see, has anybody won? It basically grabs that information right here to say, okay, what is the prize? It'll grab the value of this, and then it'll paste it into a custom field. And then the way I have my kind of fields here working, and again, I could have done it a little slightly better here by adding like the actual prizes that they could win here, and then it goes to the lottery winner flow. But I just have one, so if it contains one, then, which it will because it's like, has it right here at the start, then it'll go off to the win prize. And if it contains lose or anything else, then it goes into the did not win the lottery flow. So let's go into the next flow. I'll just go into the little ones here first. So invalid. So this one, again, was just a very easy message saying code you have entered, it does not correspond to anything here. And then if we go into the already used codes, it's just something like this, where it says like, looks like you've already scanned this code. It'll even show the first name of the person who has scanned the code. And that's essentially what this looks like. So nothing too complicated. So some of these flows are literally just one message long, so it's nothing crazy. Like I could have probably jammed everything in one flow, but I like to subfolderize things. And then the winner flow, we'll just go into the winner flow. It's pretty easily divided. I was thinking of having like multiple different prizes here. Again, it was all just for example's sake. So if, let's say they won a free car, they would have gotten, let's say, this message right over here. And if they won just a free bucket, they would have gotten this message right over here. And you could have customized the message slightly different for, say, if they won a car or if they won something different. And then maybe even ping support saying like, hey, you should get back to this person. Something along those lines. Again, the idea of the flow. It doesn't matter. Like it's more the idea of the flow that matters than the flow itself in this particular circumstance. And then I have a little download app, which is not actually connected to anything. And then the more information if they wanted more information. And once they get this message here saying they've won something, it then goes into inserting a row. It has a couple of the logic steps, so it has a timestamp, so it timestamps the exact moment when this happens. It says coupon code not redeemed yet, and the reason for that is just to keep track of when the person has actually redeemed the code, if whenever they can, and it just inserts all of the information over here into this field right here, so that way you can keep track of like who's scanning what and who's claiming what. And then this, you would, in my head, there was like a manual thing somebody would manually type in used, or you'd use some type of automation so that when it's been redeemed, it automatically updates the spreadsheet saying like claimed. That was my thinking behind this, but of course I didn't get to that part of the logic. So let it go over just one of these examples on how this kind of works. So actually I haven't gone over the losing one yet, so let's go over that one really quickly. So the lost one, I just had a randomizer here, so that way it would give the users a kind of unique message, or more or less unique. I mean, if they did it like 10 different times, they'd probably see the message a couple different times, the same message a couple different times. But if they lost, they get a little bit of a different response, but more or less it's like, oh, sorry, you've lost. And then it'll also paste into the Google spreadsheet saying they've used that code. So the same information as if they've won, but the difference is that they didn't win, and then the redeemed is just NA, meaning they're not applicable. So that's it for the losing one. So I'll go into the kind of main parts of the brain here, which is this one right here. So again, you got these QR codes. So these type of QR codes here, and you can buy them in massive batches. In my particular case, when I was setting this up, I only bought like a batch of 10, so it was a little pricey. But you get these QR codes, and they send people to unique directions, so unique links. And it's not that difficult to kind of set up this whole process. And there are more than just the QR code people that I'm using. You can use all kinds of different ones. You're just trying to make a unique batch of QR codes. And you can upload a spreadsheet of all these unique URLs or destinations. So that way you don't have to like manually type it in one at a time. You can just kind of use a Google spreadsheet and then download the CSV and then upload it to the QR code batch maker, and then they would be able to make those QR codes in bulk, and then you'll get a file, and then with that file you can send it to kind of a printing press, like a insert printing press, or maybe your packaging, and they'll be able to kind of put that on your products as need be. So once you got your unique QR codes here, you then will have like all these unique destinations. So I'm just going to kind of show you an example of what this would look like. So this code right here, this payload right here, is actually this code right here. It's the third code, so it'll work. So when I click in enter and we go into the conversation log, you'll see that it's going to basically start the conversation saying like, hey, you've won so-and-so prize. This is your code to claim it. See, so this is your result. You won this. Simply download the app, and then this is your code here. And again, I could have worked on this a little bit more, but again, it was mainly the idea of the flow and not the actual scripts and all that was with the flow. And if we look into our spreadsheet, you'll see that it added this line right here. So the flow itself is working quite well, and I could have used, let's say I could have made like, 100 different QR codes, and not every QR code would have been a winner. I would have made a bunch of them, maybe 20% of them, maybe even 80%, probably 80% of them losers, 20% winners, and out of that 20%, maybe one or two of them would be a really big prize, and then the others would be like a small prize, like an extra combo meal or some sorts. So that's it for the kind of lottery bot. There's a lot of use cases for this, especially for e-commerce, I found, because you can entice users to kind of buy more of your product because they have a chance to win. You can then gather their information, and then you can kind of just build up a list, and this would be kind of the lead magnet in order to do so. And then with this kind of logic, there's also other use cases as well. So another use case, which I'll go over into in a different video, would be buy X, get one free. So what that means by X would mean maybe buy three, get one free. So kind of like a bit of a BOGO offer, and it can keep track of how many times somebody has purchased a unique product. So this could be very, very useful for kind of skincare brands that want to entice people to kind of keep purchasing their product, build up their list, all that good stuff. So that's it for our KFC lottery bot demo.